Back in, it was about 1977, there was a song on the radio by Randy Newman. It went something along the lines of, "Short people got no reason." You all remember this? Short people got no reason to live. Now, I was an obnoxious second grader about then, and I used to sing this song to my mother, who is not very tall. I would tease her and sing, "They got little cars going beep, beep, beep. They got little voices going peep, peep, peep." Oh, it was the silliest song ever. Short people got no reason to live. And that's kind of the way most of us learn this story about a man named Zacchaeus, isn't it? In the Bible, he's a short man. And everybody is just kind of picking on him because he's short. They sing Randy Newman's song just to make fun of people like Zacchaeus. Well, actually, there is a song about Zacchaeus, right? And we sing that with our children sometimes, like at Vacation Bible School. And this was one of the stories at VBS this year that we used to study our faith as it extends around the world. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to come back to the Zacchaeus story today. Well, the song goes, as you probably remember, Zacchaeus was a wee little man, and a wee little man was he. That's his song. And we call him a wee little man. He was short and wanted to see Jesus, but he could not, because all these taller people were in front of him. And so he climbed up in a sycamore tree for the Lord he wanted to see. Now, when you're a small child in a world full of taller adults, a story about a wee little man is great stuff. But what if Zacchaeus was not just some short man who wanted to see Jesus one day? What if Zacchaeus was a short guy who was also a really bad guy? Because I think that this is actually one of the more profound stories about grace. And this is how the Bible tells his story. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through it. A man was there named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd, he could not because he was short in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree to see him because he was going to pass that way. When Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today." So he hurried down and was happy to welcome him. All who saw it began to grumble and said, "He is gone to be the guest of one who is a sinner." Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, "Look, half my possessions, Lord, I will give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will pay back 4 times as much." And then Jesus said to him, "Today, salvation has come to this house, because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek out and save the lost." Zacchaeus was short. So short, in fact, that he couldn't see over the heads of the crowds of people that came to see this Jesus. Now, the words in the Bible are that he was short in stature. He was a short man. And if that were the only thing working against him, we would all rightly come to the conclusion that those people in Jericho, they're just shallow, petty, ignorant, mean-spirited for treating a guy like they were treating him. Just because he's, well, shall we say, vertically challenged. Garen, help me out. Maybe Chad too. Because I've seen this play out down in the Grace Center. Now, Garen and Chad, imagine that you're playing ball downstairs. You're going for a rebound, but Garen is preventing Chad from getting the rebound. Let's say the basket's right up there. The ball's coming off. Garen, what position would you take to prevent Chad from getting the rebound? There's no stairs. All right, and what is this move called? The box out. You're boxing Chad out. That's the way it goes. Y'all are awesome. Thank you. It is like these people in Jericho are boxing the man out, right? I mean, you go to a basketball game, and when one of those tall guys in the middle tries to use his body to keep another player away from the basket for a rebound, they're boxing Zacchaeus out. And that's just petty. What we didn't learn in children's songs and even in children's Bibles is that there was a dark side to this wee little man. Before mentioning that Zacchaeus was short, the Bible tells us that he was a chief tax collector in the town of Jericho and that he was rich. So we thought the folks there just didn't like short people. They got no reason to live, right? It turns out that they didn't like this one short person, but not because he was short. No one liked Zacchaeus. He was the chief tax collector, and he was rich because of it. Here's how that worked, by the way. The town of Jericho, it's a border town. It was back then, it still is today. So this makes it a great place to collect taxes on people who are going from one place to another. I mean, this is the customs booth at the airport, right? This is where they say, "Did you bring back anything worth over $100?" And you declare it, and then you pay your taxes, and then you go home. But the government collecting those custom taxes in Jericho was the Roman Empire. So now follow the money trail if you can. What you get is there's a foreign country collecting taxes from the local people that then go to pay for the foreign army who are occupying their land. And now Zacchaeus, he's a local. He's a Jewish man. He's working for the Romans. And he's helping the Romans control his own people. Now, the word that people use for Zacchaeus might be collaborator. He was a traitor. A regular, what do we say, Benedict Arnold. And the people of Jericho could not stand him. You know, tax collectors like Zacchaeus were notorious for intimidating people into paying even more than they actually owed. And that way they would just kind of pocket the difference for themselves. And so you really get the picture that while Zacchaeus may have been short, I guarantee you he was built like a tank so that you don't mess with Zacchaeus. He was no helpless little choir boy. And actually, it is hard to like someone like Zacchaeus. Really hard. This is the guy that we root against. Zacchaeus is the one that makes us wonder why good things happen to bad people. Why should he be wealthy when good people around the world are starving to death in their poverty? You know what? They should write a children's song about him, call him a wee little man. Here's the thing. Do you know what a life like Zacchaeus's gets you? Rich? Maybe. Powerful? Perhaps. How about this? Lonely. A life like Zacchaeus, taking advantage of people, it gets you lonely. I mean, he has run off and hurt everyone around him. He's built a reputation for himself on greed and callousness. And now, nobody wants to be around him. He's the neighbor that children won't go visit on Halloween. They have barbecues in his neighborhood, and no one invites Zacchaeus. And when Jesus shows up in town, they all block his view, and they could care less. And you know, when Zacchaeus dies, he's going to be buried in the best plot in that town cemetery. Not a soul will be at his funeral. It's going to be me and Bill Scott, the preacher and the funeral director. I know Bill can't be here with the floodwaters today. Lonely. That is the man who climbed the sycamore tree along the streets in Jericho so that he could get a look at this man that they called Jesus. That's him. Oh, the sycamore tree, by the way, this is rich. It had this fig fruit that you could eat. It tasted awful. But you could eat it. It's the kind of food that poor folks, out of their desperation, could find for a cheap meal. They could go to the sycamore tree if they had to. And so the symbolism might as well be that Zacchaeus, the rich man, was standing on top of a garbage can that desperate people rummage through in order just to survive on the scraps of others. Do you see what I'm saying? That lonely little man had distanced himself from every one of his neighbors. Zacchaeus. And that is the one that Jesus decided to pick out of all the other people crowded around him. That's the one that Jesus decided to pick to stay with for the evening. Fascinating. This man hadn't had a guest in his house in years. And you can see how desperate he is to just connect with another human being again. That is why he's in the tree. He is desperate and broken, full of regret and full of fear. And so when Jesus calls him out of that tree, Zacchaeus stands there and promises that he is going to do whatever he has to in order to make things right again in his life. Someone might actually give him the chance that he is just dying for. And really, have you ever been there? Have you ever wanted to go back and do things so differently? You would if you could, I know, but you can't. You can only try to make apologies or pay people back, but all you can do is hope that another person will accept it. A friend of mine from years ago called me. It was really one of those phone calls out of the blue. I hadn't talked to him in a long time since we had spent many hours, days together after college. He had gone one way in life, I had gone another, and we just had lost touch. But he called, and when he heard my voice, he said, "Brown, how are you, big guy? It's been a long time. What's going on?" And we talked, and we caught up quickly on 10 or 12 years that had gone by. He was living in Florida. He was working as a financial advisor. And the girl that he dated when I knew him was now his ex-wife, and he had remarried, said he was doing things so much better than he'd ever done before. And about 5 minutes into the conversation, he says, "Look, dude, I called because I want to tell you that I am very sorry about something." And so I'm really caught off guard at this point. He said, "I was at your place about 15 years ago, and I took some money out of your wallet. I remember that I was flat broke. I owed some money to a bookie over some football games, and I was, at that time, drinking all the time. I was desperate, and I took it." And I'm stunned. I'm thinking back through this, and for one thing, you know what? At that point in my life, there could not have been a whole lot of money for him to take. Big deal. I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together most of the time. Plus, he was one of my boys. And so I said, "Steve, man, what are you talking about? What money? And who cares? I would have given it to you if he had asked." And he interrupted me. "No. You have to let me do this. 12 steps, man, 12 steps, and this one matters. You are part of this list of people that I can remember who I've done wrong, and I'm trying to make amends for all of it." Zacchaeus. He's standing there in front of Jesus, and he said, "I am going to make it right. I will take half of everything I own and give it away to people who are poor." And you know, there are folks in his town who are poor, partly because of him. But he wanted to be their neighbor again. He wanted to belong in his own community. He wanted to actually mean something and make a difference. And then he promised to pay all these people 4 times the amount that he had ever cheated them. What is he even going to have left after all of that? These are the people, by the way, who are not letting him see Jesus. The law only required a 20% penalty for paying back people that you've stolen from. He said, "I'll give back 4 times as much." Do you know what Jesus called all of that? Zacchaeus, and all of his desperation, his loneliness, his broken desire to just belong again. Do you know what Jesus called it? Salvation. He said, "Today salvation has come to this house because he too is a son of Abraham." What he said is that Zacchaeus was again part of the family. He belongs. And that is what Jesus called salvation. I don't know if you saw this. People used to whisper about that wee little man who was a tax collector. Oh, they whispered. They said awful things behind his back, and they were probably true. But they whispered, they talked. And when Jesus decided to have compassion on even this guy, well, they started to whisper about him too. He's gone to be the guest of one who is a sinner. It is like Jesus took the bad reputation of one person and put it on himself so that that one could live a whole new, different life. Does that sound familiar? Who would do that? Who would do that?